This DSL100H just came in, and the owner says, needs new power tubes. It is noisy. Call if it needs anything. Let's see what awaits us inside. So this is built pretty much like a DSL40C, only it's 100. I see a couple of broken solder joints here and there. So I'm going to reflow some preamp tube sockets with bad solder joints, then power it up and see where we're at as far as noise and everything. Let me see if I can get a picture of that real fast. Right here, you can see there's a concentric ring around the actual pin in the middle of the solder joint. That's typically what a bad solder joint on one of these looks like. Let me reflow that and a few more that I've seen, and then we'll test the amp. All right, after reflowing about 10 different solder joints on the preamp tubes, many of which were grids, I then made sure all the screws holding the PCB in place were tight. Then I verified the screen grid resistors were all good, they're all 1Ks. And I verified the bias, which is on the cool side, but fine, and both output pairs are matched. So that's a good starting point. So here's on the clean. And that's all pretty nice, except there's a thump that comes out of the speakers occasionally rhythmically, only if this volume is up. Though it's not doing it now because I'm of course I'm recording, and this pot's very dirty. And the thump that comes out sounds a lot like the thump right there. So I think there's something not quite making sufficient contact. Let's see what the dirty channel sounds like. Which one of these does that? All right, so let's check the crunch before we go to the other channel. I guess that was the crunch. All right, so now I'm on the clean. All right, let's go to the dirty channel. Let's tap on some tubes, knock some stuff over. That sounds like a tube to me. So what I'm hearing is a very noisy preamp tube. I'm hearing some gunk on the pots. I'm going to start by cleaning the pots and swapping tubes one at a time until I can narrow that down. But overall, I think the amp's pretty healthy, so this probably won't be a big deal. Let me just do some more exploring and we'll see where we're at. All right, I've cleaned the pots and almost all those issues have gone away. V1, which is just a Marshall branded tube, is very noisy. I've got a JJ in there for now. Sometimes, if I press on the board on the tubes, this signal kind of fades slightly. It's not doing it now. And if I'm on the clean channel and I even touch or jiggle the, thank you meter, the clean crunch switch, just that happens if that even gets vibrated. So I think there may be a couple of solder joints on the bottom of the board that need to be reflowed. So that's the next level. If it seems like I'm going in every direction but what the owner said, because he's like, needs new output tubes, et cetera, all the labor that I'm doing so far, including pulling the board to check for bad solder joints, costs less than a quad of EL34s. I mean, I'll do it if the owner really wants it, but that's seeming, so far at least, to be a wholly optional thing to change the tubes. The issues the amp has so far are just some iffy solder joints and one bad preamp tube, so that's not a bad place to be. Well, I pulled up the board. Kudos to Marshall for making it very easy to do so on this amp. It's nice when you can flip the whole thing up and have access. I didn't find any broken solder joints per se. I saw maybe six or so that were a little bit solder starved. And I reflowed the connections on these switches and the gain and volume pots just to be sure. And I, of course, cleaned these switches. Hopefully when I put it back together, that last bit of noise is gone from there, and then I'll be able to see where we're at. But, it was easy to access, easy to put back. It doesn't add to the time. Better to be safe than sorry. So let me put all this back and see where we're at. Okay, everything put back together. All the switches are cleaned up. It's not doing that nasty noise anymore just from vibrating. Nothing's cutting out if I press places. All the other tubes seem okay. If the owner wants me to change them, I'll be glad to. I'll call them after this. Clean. The crunch. Lead 1. Lead 2. So I think the owner's going to be really happy with this once it's all put back together. But I'm going to hold off and see if he wants me to get new tubes, just cause. Anyway, if he goes for the new tubes, there'll be a part 2 of this. Maybe we'll do a playing video with a real mic at real volumes, because I've had the masters low here so it doesn't blow out the lav mic. If not, this will be the last one for this one. But for the price point, this is a well-made amp. I know people will be like, but it's PCB, but it's this, but it's that. It's very inexpensive for what you get. It's just the economy of scale. The tube sockets, the preamps are board mounted. The octals, the power tubes, are chassis mounted. They're all Beltons. Good quality stuff throughout, used well. This had no real issues other than stress on the PCB mounted preamp tubes, weakening some of the solder joints, and some dirty pots and switches. And, that can happen. This is a minor repair bill, all things considered. Even if he goes for tubes, the repair part's done aside from a final bias, and the bias circuit works quite well in this one. So I'm glad to report the DSL100H is back in my good graces.